For nearly 250 years, Indians endured the inhuman cruelty and tyranny of the British, continuously fighting against their oppression. Countless children, elders, and youth sacrificed their lives, and it is only because of their sacrifices that we breathe free in an independent nation today. As we celebrate the 75th year of independence with the Amrit Mahotsav, it's important to remember that the British were not always rulers of India. Before their arrival, the Mughal Empire ruled over India, and if the Mughals had not allowed it, the British would never have set foot in this country. At that time, India was under the powerful rule of the Mughals, and the Marathas were also prepared to die for their motherland. In such a scenario, the British had to struggle greatly to establish their rule in India. However, over time, the British gradually increased their dominance to the point where they completely wiped out the Mughal Empire. But this historical tale raises the question, how did the British manage to destroy the powerful Mughal Empire? In today's video, we will narrate that very story. But let's begin another chapter of history. History tells us that by the end of the 16th century, India was so prosperous that about 1/4 of the world's total production came from India. This is why India was known as the Golden Bird, and the entire world had its eyes on this golden bird. The British, of course, were no exception. At that time, Emperor Akbar ruled Delhi, and he was considered one of the wealthiest rulers of his era. However, during the same period, Britain was on the brink of civil war, and under the reign of Queen Elizabeth I, most of the British economy depended on agriculture. Unfortunately, due to the Civil War, Britain could only account for 3 to 4% of global production, while Portugal and Spain were rapidly advancing ahead of them. Conditions were so dire that British sailors resorted to looting Portuguese ships because there was nothing left to plunder in Britain itself. It was during this time that a British sailor, on a voyage, discovered the immense wealth and prosperity of India. This news quickly reached the British government. Then came the year 1600, when 200 British merchants formed a company called the East India Company. When the company's members presented their political and diplomatic plans to Queen Elizabeth, she supported the East India Company. Meanwhile, in India, Emperor Akbar had passed away, and his son Jahangir had ascended the Mughal throne. The year was 1608. Jahangir, unaware of the British intentions, was ruling India while Captain William Hawkins, along with some merchant ships, arrived in Surat, Gujarat. The moment the British set foot in India, a dark shadow began to loom over the country. One that would eventually bring a tragic history, cannot be forgotten until the end of time. Upon their arrival, the British announced the establishment of the East India Company. With this proposal, Captain William Hawkins, along with some of his companions, approached Emperor Jahangir's court, bearing valuable gifts. However, due to the pressure from the Mughals and the Portuguese, Jahangir initially rejected the proposal. But the British did not give up. They continued to negotiate, adding new and profitable deals to their trade agreement, repeatedly approaching Jahangir. Eventually, after some time, Jahangir signed the agreement, allowing the British to conduct trade in India. With this approval, the British established factories in Patna, Surat, Mumbai, and Chennai, and began their trade. In the beginning, the East India Company provided employment to the locals and paid them well, which impressed the Indians. Many Indian traders also became associated with these factories. But this did not last long. As the East India Company's trade expanded across India, the greed in the minds of the British grew so much that they began plotting to take control of India. In 1686, with this goal in mind, the British declared war against the Mughals. In the battle with Aurangzeb, the Mughals completely defeated the British. This defeat made the British realize that they could not defeat the Mughals in battle, but they still wanted to take control of India. So they employed the same strategy that crafty Indian politicians continue to use to this day, the divide and rule policy. After losing the battle, the British apologized to Aurangzeb and promised not to repeat their mistakes. Aurangzeb forgave them after imposing a fine and allowed them to continue their trade. However, the Mughals' act of forgiving the British became the primary cause of their downfall. After Aurangzeb's death in 1707, infighting among those vying for the Mughal throne weakened the empire. Eventually, inexperienced rulers ascended the Mughal throne, unable to effectively manage the empire. These inexperienced rulers kept changing laws and regulations, which gave the British an opportunity to execute their plans. In 1717, a Mughal emperor granted the British a royal firman decree, allowing them to trade without paying taxes by paying a small annual fee. Meanwhile, the Persian king saw an opportunity and attacked India. The Mughal rulers, intoxicated by their power, were unaware of this sudden invasion until the Persian army reached Delhi, nearly wresting the city from the Mughals. In a desperate attempt to save Delhi, the Mughals paid around 20 million rupees, along with many precious jewels and diamonds. After this massive plunder, the Mughal Empire weakened and the British conspiracy began to unfold. But by then, it was too late and the empire started slipping out of their hands. The British continued to adopt various strategies to establish their dominance over India. In the first phase, they waged war against the Nawab of Bengal, Suraj-ud-Dawla, the aim of ousting him. The British applied the divide and rule strategy by creating divisions between Hindus and Muslims, which Suraj-ud-Dawla failed to manage, resulting in a British victory. After Suraj-ud-Dawla's defeat in the Battle of Plassey, the British, allied with his general, made him the Nawab of Bengal, continued to expand their influence. Time passed, and the British power and authority over India grew steadily. In 1764, British army defeated the Nawab of Awadh, the Nawab of Bengal, and Mughal Emperor Shah Alam II in the Battle of Buxar. Additionally, by creating divisions between the Nizam and the Marathas, the British first instigated them to fight each other, and then, taking advantage of the situation, defeated them and captured their territory. By the 18th century, the British had extended their control over nearly every region of India, allowing them to impose taxes on trade and other activities, extracting significant wealth from the country. To solidify their rule, the British also formed alliances with Indian landlords who could further their interests. Although the British did bring some positive changes to India, such as implementing educational policies, constructing roads, and introducing the railway system, these actions won the support of some social reformers. However, this betrayal of trust became evident during the 1857 War of Independence, when many landlords and social reformers sided with the British, contributing to their eventual victory. With their victory in hand, the British captured the last Mughal emperor, Bahadur Shah Zafar, and sent him to prison in Rangoon, executing his sons and many other members of the Mughal family. Thus, they enslaved all of India. This was the tragic story of how one mistake by the Mughals, driven by self-interest, gave the British an opportunity to spread their influence in India, a mistake that cost generations of Indians dearly. In your opinion, do you think the Mughal Empire is responsible for the British invasion? Let us know in the comments below. If you learned something new or found this video interesting, please like the video, share it with your friends and family, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on the bell notification to stay updated with our future videos. See you in the next video with a new topic. Until then, goodbye.